What's going on, guys? Reisshub back with another video, and in today's video I want to cover the $1 million Super Cup, which is on the 21st of November. I'm going to give you everything you need to know about it and how you can actually play this most efficiently. It's probably the easiest earnings of the year, unless we have a Winter Royale, I don't know, so let's get into it. So let's look at the format a little bit. So the first thing that we should know is this is not a Marvel Knockout LTM. It is normal Battle Royale. However, all of the Mythics, all of the kind of superhero items like the Doom's Gauntlet that was removed, or sorry, the Doom's Mystical Bomb that was removed, all of the Iron Man's items that are there, all of these are actually in the game. So it's still the arena playlist, so we don't have boogie bombs like you have in pubs and stuff like that, but it is still with all of the Mythics, which is important, right? Because this is what's going to change this from a normal tournament. The playlist is actually open to anyone, so you don't have to be contender, you don't have to be in champions, literally any duo can play. And on that note, it's not solos or trios, it's a duos competition. So duos, and it is open to anyone to play. That means if you're on console, you can play with anyone on PC. If you're on PC, you can play with console. If you're on any mobile device, maybe apart from iOS, you can all play together at this one time and all play with anyone you want, and it's open to literally anyone. On top of that, rather than getting 500 materials capped of each, so 1500 total, there's only 200 each, so 600 mats total, which is obviously significantly lower. And for the siphon, rather than getting 50 materials each, you get 20, so a lot less materials overall. So when we get to the strategies later on, we'll cover some ways around how you can kind of play around that most efficiently. It's a 2-round format going across 2 rounds. Both rounds are on the same day. I'm going to put the Fortnite tracker link down below. You can just check whichever region is yours for the times. Obviously, you can just check in-game as well. But just for EU, for example, UK time, it's 2 till 5 and then 6 till 9. So both of them are 3 hours long with 10 games each. In the bigger regions, which is EU, NA East, NA West, and Brazil, it's top 1,000 teams go through, and in the 3 other smaller regions, it's top 500 that go through, so not as many at all. The scoring system is pretty much the same as DreamHack. The only difference is that at top 45 you get 1 point rather than getting top 25 2 points. It's literally no difference essentially. So 55 placement points total for a Victory Royale, and an elimination is worth 5 points. So essentially 11 eliminations equals 1 Victory Royale in terms of placement. So it's really elimination heavy as well. So there's going to be a lot of W keying going on in this tournament, so you got to watch out for that by far. At the same time, there's also no elimination cap, which means that you can get as many eliminations per game as you want. So again, definitely where eliminations are going to be very, very important in this tournament, placement not as much. Prize pool, I'm going to put all on screen right now. You can see, ooh, lots of prize pool. Crazy. But as you notice, this is a very, very widespread prize pool. Let's take EU, for example, the biggest region with the most prize pool. Top 500 teams, which is a lot of teams, get money, which is by far the biggest spread and a lot of people's biggest chance to get earnings. And like I said, it's a much more casual gameplay with more of the Mythics in it as well, so a lot of these people are going to be way larger chance to actually get money in this tournament. So watch out for how you can actually play through later on again, where I'll go through some more strategies. But all the other regions on screen, if you want to actually see a full breakdown of all of them, I'll put the rules down below in the description, and you can kind of scroll down to your region and just find exactly what the prize pools for your specific region are there. And most importantly, it is region locked, so you can only play on one region. I actually thought it was not region locked, but I've just checked through the rules to confirm, and it is indeed region locked, so you can only play one region. Okay, so let's do a bit of a run through of all of the Mythics that are going to be available. So it's all of the Avengers ones that are in the game. Some of these will be familiar to the people who have played competition already, and if you've just played pubs, some of these should also be very, very familiar to you too, because you'll have seen them in all your pub games. So I'm going to split this up into where you can get all of these Mythics. So first we're going to go to Doom's Domain, which most people will be very familiar with these. Doom's Mystical Bomb and the Arcane Gauntlets as well. The Arcane Gauntlets shoot little blasts of energy, they do 35 damage, and they have a small little blast radius as well. They have infinite ammo, but in all honesty, these are not amazing, and probably not really worth taking at all in the competition. For the Doom's Mystical Bomb, this is something that really should be worth taking if you have the opportunity to, of course. I'm not going to say drop at Doom's, let's talk about that later, but fundamentally it's really, really good. It's a bomb that does damage to players and also has a 20-second cooldown, but most importantly, it sets a lot of builds on fire, which if your opponents are using wood or they're standing on grass, it's going to be really, really good to hit a ton of damage on them. So Mystical Bomb is much better than the other ones, but to be honest, most of the other Mythics are much better. Moving on to Stark Industries, we can get 2 more mythics here by eliminating Iron Man. First is the Unibeam, and the second is the Repulsor Gauntlets. Now the Unibeam does 90 damage upon hitting an opponent, and it can also go through 2 layers of builds. I originally thought when this is updated that it went through infinite levels of builds, but now I can see that it goes through only 2 layers of builds, which is going to be incredibly powerful if someone's actually boxed up. And then the Repulsor Gauntlets do 20 damage, and these actually lock on if your opponent is far enough away. I'm not sure entirely what the distance is. But again, it's kind of similar to the Doom's loot where it's just consistent firing, infinite ammo, and also allows you to do a kind of double jump that'll enable you to not take fall damage and do that every 20 seconds. The next item that's dropped is Wolverine's Claws, and this is actually dropped in Weeping Woods, and these have 3 separate abilities. The first one is the Spin Slash, which spins you around in the air, dealing damage to others and opponents with a 5-second cooldown. The next is the Air Dash, which dashes you forward towards the direction of the opponent you're looking at and does 25 damage, and then has a 5-second cooldown. And then the third ability is a Dodge, where you can dodge out of the way, left, right, back, or forward. The next few items are all ones you get from the Stark supply drones, so there's a 30% chance for the majority of these. I'm not entirely sure how all of them actually drop, but I think it's a 30% chance to get all of these drops. So there's actually a very large amount of chance that you're going to get at least one if you go to one of these supply drops, because there is 4 supply drones at all of these drops. So there's a large chance you're going to get a mythic from all of these. So the first one is Black Panther's Kinetic Armor, and this is something you can use, and it'll have a cooldown of 20 seconds. Now this will give you more shielding, and it'll actually make you take less damage in return from opponents, and this will happen for 5 seconds. So then there'll be a 15-second where it's cooldown. Once it's over, then you can use it again. The second ability on it is actually kind of a blast or a spin, which will do 40 damage to players around and 90 to the damages of the structures. The next one is Groot's Bramble Shield, and this was also in competitive, so you should remember this for a while. And it does 150 damage to structures, so basically you jump into the Groot's ball and roll around very much so like a baller, and you can roll through builds like this, and at the same time it also gives you white HP back. It just kind of regenerates it over time while you're in it. You can be broken by shooting at it, so other players can shoot at you and break it, which will unfortunately make you not be able to go into it. But then it has a cooldown of 25 seconds after that, so you can just reuse it again after that. Next up is the Silver Surfer's Surfboard. That is a mouthful to say, but it's also basically uses kind of like a launch pad where it'll send you up into the sky and you'll instantly redeploy by standing on the board and flying through the sky. So really, really good use of mobility. This was in competitive for a while, and it was also kind of the similar to the broomsticks that were in the game at the Halloween update. So very, very similar to this, and it has a 30-second cooldown. So the She-Hulk's Fist is another one that's dropped from the supply crates, and this does a ton of damage. So there's an ability where you can jump and do a smash onto the floor, which does 40 damage, but then you can go straight into punching materials here, where you can actually do a combination that first does 45, then 55, then the final one does somewhere between 70 to 100. I'm not entirely sure exactly which one does, but either way, it does a ton of damage if you hit all 3. The jump has a 5-second cooldown, and you can break through builds doing it, so very, very powerful. The next item is Storm's Whirlwind Blast. I'm not actually still sure if it's in the game right now, but it does no player damage and destroys 100 damage to all builds. So it kind of creates a large whirlwind and actually knocks out a ton of the builds. So because there's so little builds available for each player, this is going to be really, really good for doing damage to their structures when they're hiding in here, and then having other players be able to finish up the eliminations after that. The last one of these items that's dropped at the Stark Jet is Thor's Mjolnir Strike, which is basically you aim it at an area and it fires down a large strike, almost very much similar to a Junk Rift back in the Season 1, or into Chapter 1, sorry, which is very, very powerful. However, this only does 60 damage. It does act like a shockwave in the bottom, so if there's players down hit by it, they are going to be thrown out kind of very much so horizontally or vertically. So you have to watch out for this if you're using it. Maybe switch your AR after it to ensure you can try and tag them out of the sky as they fly through. So let's kind of get into some of the strategies that you can use first when you have the mythics, how to get them, and then how to actually utilize these later on as well. And then after that, we'll come into strategies if you don't have mythics and how you can kind of play around this interesting meta. So firstly, let's go about getting mythics. I would not recommend landing at Stark Industries or Doom's Domain. Stark Industries is going to be heavily contested 100%. It's always heavily contested in WK Cups to start with, and if you are not a top pro player, don't land there. If you're a top pro player, fantastic. You can land there because that's what they've been doing in open tournaments to get high amounts of eliminations, picking them up on all of the players who are around anyway. But you and your duo will almost certainly go down early trying to get the mythics and trying to get the vault loots there. So not worth it one little bit. Again, if you're a top level duo, if you're a pro, these guys are going to be dropping here, and that's what they should be doing because they're going to be able to pick up high amounts of eliminations because placement isn't going to be as important in this tournament at all. So if you're not going Stark, should you go Dooms? Probably not. Similar things are going to happen where there's going to be a lot of players there, and in all honesty, the Dooms loot isn't that good. The Dooms loot just is not as good as the other mythics that are around. The Mystical Bomb is really, really good, but with the amount of people who are probably going to be contesting here, it's probably not worth landing at to be able to contest it by that many people unless you're going for high eliminations in the early game. So what should you do? Well, my recommendation is to land somewhere near one of the Quinjets. You can see on screen right now, I have a map of where all of the Quinjets are. And if you can see, there's a ton split all around the map very evenly. So one of the recommendations I would go at is just go any POIs that you're familiar with landing around here. So obviously, if you've never landed at Lazy Lake, I wouldn't land at Lazy Lake. But if you've landed at Sweaty Sands, or if you've landed to the west-hand side of the map over here, where the kind of between the fancy view house, the hotel, and also the castle up at the top, this is maybe a place for you because there's 2 Quinjets here. And there's obviously a chance that you're probably going to get at least 1 mythic from each of these Quinjets if they land. Now, that is another point. If they land, what you should be doing is, as the bus route is coming in, you should be checking where these Quinjets are landing because they're not a guarantee that they're going to be in all of these spots. You need to check that if you're going to drop somewhere intentionally just to get a Quinjet, that there's actually one landing there. So as the bus is pulling in, ensure you're checking where those Quinjets are going and maybe adjust your drop spot to one that does have one, obviously only if you're familiar with this drop spot. Don't go landing in POIs that you're not familiar with, you don't know how to fight with, you don't know how to loot with, because there are going to be other players there and you're just going to throw your game because of it. Another POI that I think is going to be very, very strong for this is actually Slurpy Swamps as well. This is because obviously Slurpy is just a very, very good drop in general. There's 19 chests here, so not that many. However, the fact that there's a guaranteed shield means that you don't need as many chests to start with. So Slurpy Swamp is going to be a really, really good drop spot for this. And if you notice, there's also 2 Stark Jets around it. So you actually have the possibility of getting 2 Stark Jets after this, which is obviously going to be really, really good. Again, you and your duo may be able to get a mythic each. However, you do notice that there is a Stark Jet on to the right that you may not be able to get down south because teams may drop on this. So if you're not comfortable landing Slurpy Swamp, you can actually do a drop that's very, very comfortable and very familiar with a lot of players who played FNCS, which is landing in the factory down there and one landing on the Stark Jet. Now, if you're not comfortable landing on the Stark Jet because you can actually be eliminated pretty easily by some of the AI that are there, you can land a little bit further up on the gas station, loot that so that you have weapons to be able to eliminate the Stark bots that are there, and then go down and pick up some eliminations on the players that are down there, get yourself some mythic loot, and carry out the game as you can. Your other teammate who can land at the dam can then go up onto the other Stark Jet and pick up this as well. So 2 Stark Jet possibilities and 2 mythics. This could be really, really good. Another drop that's going to be really good is Craggy Cliffs. There are 2 Quinjets near it, one to the north in the water and one south just below it. So you can actually just rift up onto the hill here to grab this Quinjet because most of the time a lot of people don't rotate through this way. However, I would be wary because the teams who are landing at Heart Lake may actually end up rotating through here just because of this particular POI. But a lot of times this Stark Jet isn't actually taken at all. So you've got a high chance of getting ones from here. And even if this one has been contested, you can get the one to the north if it is spawned. These are just kind of some of the best ways in my eyes to do it, but look at the map, see where all of these drops are, and just go somewhere you're comfortable with. Like I said, don't drop somewhere that you're not comfortable with. This might be very, very awkward. You're going to lose off spawn, and you're going to throw your tournament because of this. So out of all of the mythics that you can get from the Stark Jets, what do I think is actually the most things worth taking? Well, firstly, I'm going to say Thor's Mjolnir Strike because it destroys so many of the opponent's builds. So if these guys are boxed up, you're going to destroy so many of their builds, and because there's such a low amount of materials, this is actually going to be really, really beneficial for you then just to spray at them and pick up eliminations this way. Very easy. So I would definitely put Thor's Mjolnir Strike up there with the top of all of these that I would take. After that, I'd take Storm's Whirlwind Blast. Similar thing, it destroys a ton of their builds. It doesn't actually do that much damage to the opponents. However, it does destroy a lot of their builds, which will enable you to pick up eliminations pretty easily just by double spraying at people. Silver Surfboards, Silver Surfer Surfboard's not that amazing. It's good for getting away from fights, but again, you're just going to be sprayed. And because there's low materials, chances are you're not really going to be able to box up that easily. So it's really good if you're being aggressive and trying to jump onto teams and W key them. So if you're going for eliminations, this is probably really good if you have the opportunity to take it. But at the same time, firstly, it's duos, so you're going to be leaving your teammate behind. And then on top of this, it's not got really that much ability to get away from fights because you get away, but you can't box up again, and if you don't have that many materials. So it's good, but it's not one I'd put up in the top priorities. I would actually honestly probably prefer Groot's Bramble Shield if you're going to be aggressive, because you can actually just roll into people's boxes, destroy their builds, and get in and be very aggressive and pick up eliminations this way. It's the same thing with a She-Hulk's Fist. You can get into boxes really easily with this, and I definitely recommend this would be as a high priority out of all of these again, just because you can destroy people's builds, get into their boxes, and pick up easy eliminations, because it's very difficult for players to kind of eliminate you as you're just clobbering them straight up. So how are we actually going to play out the tournament? How are we going to go through our general play style? Well, the first thing is you're going to need eliminations. It's going to be very, very important for you to get eliminations and be consistent in placement, obviously. But if you want to be the top of the top in the leaderboards and get the most money out of this, you're going to need to get some eliminations. Consistency is always key, and you can definitely be consistent and make it to the top 500, but you do need at least 1 or 2 big elimination games in there as well. So elimination points are very, very valued in this format, so it's worth going for a lot of eliminations. I don't normally say that in my tournaments, because most of the time I'm saying, hey, be consistent, go for your placement, but instead their eliminations are important. If you're not that good of a player, still, you can just be consistent on your placement and make that top 500, but you just need to know that you need to take your eliminations if there's an opportunity to do so, because you're not going to be able to get much back from this at all, having a lower siphon in terms of the materials, and at the same time having a lower elimination cap. Sorry, a lower material cap, so it's going to be much more difficult for you actually to be able to pick up constant placement, because you're not going to have that much to box up and move with. So this is where I think if you don't have a mythic, this is where you're going to have your opportunity to pick up the most eliminations, and that is just with simply double spraying. Like I've said multiple times, everyone's having way less eliminations, so if you see a player boxed up, if really you see anyone, you and your teammate both constantly spraying at the opponents is what is going to be picking up the most eliminations for you. So for this, you really need to ensure that you drop somewhere that has a lot of ammo. So in my eyes, Lazy Lake is a really, really good drop for this, because you get a ton of assault rifle ammo, and at the same time there's a Quinjet there, so you can actually get a Stark Industry bot if you want it to get some mythics. So this is why I'd probably recommend going to a POY over kind of a poverty looting path, because you're going to get more ammo, which is going to allow you just to put more focus onto other teams and just spray, spray, spray. Usually I don't think the SMG is worth it, but having something else in your inventory that you can spray with might be very, very valuable, because like I said, low materials, so just consistently spraying at people over and over and over again, it's probably going to be really, really valuable for picking up those elims. When you're fighting someone, it'll also be pretty easy to figure out if they're low on materials or not, because if you constantly see them switching, so if they were using brick first, then you see them switch to their metal, while you're constantly spraying, most of the time you're going to see that they're actually run out of their brick. Cool, so now they're on their metal. If you see them go down to their wood, you know that these guys are on low material, so there's no need to make dumb mistakes, just consistently keep spraying after this, wait until they run out, and you're going to pick up easy eliminations. For yourself, you really want to make sure that you're actually constantly farming as well. Because there's such a low amount of materials, any materials that you use, you need to be refarming them as you're moving. Because if you run out, you're going to be in a really bad spot. Very, very poor. So anytime you use a bit of wood, just refarm it. And that's kind of something you should be doing on your rotates. If you're kind of wasting your wood on your rotates, it's not wasting, but if you're using it to protect yourself while you rotate, always try and harvest it back as you go. Because there's such a low amount of materials, each one that you use is going to be so important. Okay, so what about if you're trying to just avoid fights in general? Well, firstly, let's go for 2 main options right here, hills and bushes. Now, I made a tweet about this, and I think bushes are going to be incredibly powerful because you have low materials. Boxing up in the mid game, if you're trying to avoid fights, for example, just isn't going to work because someone with mythics is going to shoot your base. You're going to take damage, and it's going to be over for you. So boxing up mid game is almost going to be, I don't want to say pointless, but it's going to be very, very difficult to do. So bush, get in it. Get in the bushes mid-game. You're going to be avoiding so many people this way. They're not going to be able to find you. And you also might be able to get that initial beam off if you surprise people. So hide in your bushes. This is normally very odd information to be giving out in terms of tournaments, but in all honesty, I think hiding in bushes is going to be very important. And on that note, if you see a bush, just assume there's someone in it. Just assume. Especially if you have a mythic and you can just shoot it at a bush if there's nothing else to and you don't want to waste the cooldown for it. just to make sure there's no one hiding in that bush. And I also said hills there because if you're up on the hill, there's much less chance that you're going to get focused because there's less angles of people to shoot down. If you're kind of in a low ground situation, all the players above you will just be able to shoot down at you, waste your builds. So high ground is going to become even more important in this meta. And the final thing is, because obviously you have lower materials, you're going to have to make sure your movement and your right hand peeking is so much better. Any other game, a lot of players obviously use the kind of natural environment around them to hide around, to take shots, kind of peek on. This really doesn't happen as much in Fortnite because people are way too reliant on their builds. I'm actually going to be doing a video on this coming up, and it's funnily something enough you can learn about Nick Merckx and how he kind of plays. Obviously a lot to learn, well, obviously he has a lot to learn himself, but at the same time, there's a lot on top that he does really, really well when he has low materials that a lot of people don't do. So in terms of just trying to pick up elims when you have no mats and low mats, you know, use your right hand peeks on walls. Always be kind of trying to move around inside buildings like that. If there's kind of external stuff, a bush outside, you know, a wall that you can hide around, a roof that you can look over, you know, use the natural environments that are there to your advantage to hide behind and pick up eliminations, tags, and opponents this way. It's going to be really, really crucial because you're on those low materials. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, learned a lot. Top 500 in EU make money. I hope you guys kind of catch that bag. I will be playing. Hopefully I will catch that bag too. Maybe first, I don't know, do an Aussie Antics Classic, get that content creator up there at the top of the leaderboards. Hope you enjoyed, learned a lot. Hope you have good luck as well. Catch you later. Peace.